A billionaire's daughter lies on the edge of life, until a mysterious doctor saves her. But what happens next will shake your soul, because the child she saves is the one she secretly gave up years ago. And that's just the beginning. What they uncover will change everything. Stay with this story, it's not just emotional, it's unforgettable. Before we dive into this incredible story, do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon button so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. This is not just entertainment. Every story here comes with a meaningful moral lesson that can touch your heart and inspire your soul. Doctor saves billionaire's daughter, unaware she's treating the child she secretly gave up years ago. I still remember the cold wind brushing past my collar that morning. The kind of morning that slices through your thoughts. Where even the sunrise feels too tired to shine. I was sitting in the back seat of my Bentley, motionless. Outside the hospital entrance, I stared at the revolving glass doors. People moved in and out. Nurses, families, exhausted interns. But I could not move. My daughter was inside. 7 years old. Burning with fever for 3 nights. Delirious. And nothing the top doctors tried had worked. Money had never been the problem. But now, it meant nothing. Because for the first time in my life, I was terrified. Her name was Elina. The one soul who had melted the steel around my heart. The one person who called me Papa with a light so bright. It burned through every dark memory I had ever buried. I built empires. Bought out companies with cold efficiency. I never lost. Until now, when I stood helpless before a child's frail body. Trembling beneath white sheets. My assistant called me again. The specialist is here, sir. Should I send her in? I could only nod. A few minutes later, she entered the room. Slim. Calm. Measured. A woman in her late 30s, perhaps. Her name tag read, Dr. Elina Michailova. There was something oddly familiar about her. Not her face, but the way she stood. Shoulders straight, yet heavy with something unseen. Eyes steady, but hiding the tremor of something long buried. She walked over to Elina. Gently. Like she already knew her. Like the child was a part of her breath. As I stood in the corner, watching, I saw something I could not explain. The way she held my daughter's hand. The way Elina, barely conscious, instinctively reached for hers. A silent recognition. Dr. Michailova closed her eyes for a brief second. Then opened them with quiet determination. She is not dying, she said softly. But I need space. No one in this room for the next 4 hours. I hesitated. No doctor had spoken to me like that before. I had always been the billionaire. The man others waited on. But in that moment, I stepped outside. 4 hours passed like 4 years. Pacing the hallway. Remembering every moment I had failed as a father. Her mother had left years ago. We had been young. Reckless. A whirlwind romance, followed by bitter silence. She disappeared after giving birth. Left me with a newborn and a note. Forgive me. She deserves better than a broken woman. I searched for her for 2 years. Every investigator, every private contact. Nothing. Eventually, I gave up. Buried the wound under boardrooms and buyouts. Now here I was. Waiting to know if I would lose the only person I had left. When Dr. Michailova finally emerged. Her scrubs were soaked with sweat. Her eyes red. But she smiled. She is stable, she said. Her fever is down. Her vitals are normalizing. I nearly collapsed. I had not cried in 20 years. But tears broke from somewhere deep. I looked at her again. Closer. Have we met before? I asked. Her smile faded, just slightly. I do not believe so, sir. But her voice wavered. Only for a second. The next day, she returned to check on Elina. This time, she brought a small locket. Handed it to my daughter, who giggled as she opened it. Inside was a tiny photo. Of a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. I used to be a nurse before I became a doctor, she said, turning to me. I used to carry a photo of a baby I once helped deliver. It reminded me why I chose this path. Something about the story felt rehearsed. Over the next week, she visited every day. And Elina clung to her as if she had known her forever. She smiled differently when Dr. Elina entered. Laughed more. Spoke with warmth. One night, I stayed behind longer than usual. I found Dr. Elina sitting at Elina's bedside, whispering something in Russian. When I entered, she startled. But before I could speak, Elina murmured, "Mama," in her sleep. I froze.
Elina turned pale. Her lips trembled.
She has never said that word before, I whispered. Not once in 7 years.
Elina stood.
Her eyes welled with tears. There are things
I need to explain. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding.
But before she could continue,
her pager beeped.
An emergency in the trauma wing.
I will return, she said.
But her voice cracked like glass. She walked away quickly, her white coat fluttering behind her.
And I stood there,
gripping the small locket she had left behind on the nightstand. I opened it again. And behind the photo, tucked deep inside the frame, was a tiny handwritten name.
Elina.
The handwriting matched a note I had hidden in my safe for 7 years. A goodbye letter from a woman I never stopped loving. The mother of my child. I stared at the hallway where she had disappeared. And suddenly, the past came crashing into the present.
Was it possible?
Was the woman who saved my daughter the same woman who gave her life? I needed answers.
Not tomorrow. Now.
I turned and ran toward the trauma wing. The hospital corridors stretched endlessly before me. Each step echoed with the weight of 1,000 questions. My heart pounded louder than the soles of my shoes. Every nurse I passed seemed blurry, irrelevant. All I could think of was her.
Elina.
The name now burned through my chest like fire. If it was true, if she was who I now believed she was, then everything I thought I knew about my past, my failures, was about to change.
I reached the trauma wing. It was chaos.
Paramedics wheeling in a young boy, bloodied and unconscious. A mother screaming behind him. Doctors shouting orders. And in the middle of it all,
there she was. Calm. Precise.
Beautiful in her intensity. She pressed gauze to the boy's abdomen, shouting vitals to the team. Every movement was pure instinct.
Her hands, steady. Her voice, unwavering.
She was saving another life. While I stood on the edge of mine,
crumbling,
I waited in the shadows until the boy was stabilized and wheeled away.
Until the noise calmed.
Until she finally leaned against the wall, breathing heavily.
Elina, I said softly. She turned.
And for the first time,
she did not hide.
Her eyes locked with mine.
No mask. No shield. Just raw, unfiltered emotion. You knew, I said.
You knew from the moment you saw her. She lowered her head.
And nodded.
Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I recognized her instantly, she whispered. Her eyes, they are yours. But her smile, it is mine.
My throat tightened. I took a step closer. Why? Why did you leave? Why now?
Why like this? She looked up again, the pain in her gaze cutting deep.
I was broken, Leon. After the birth.
I was not well. I had postpartum depression so severe. I could barely recognize myself in the mirror. I was afraid I would harm her. Afraid I would ruin her. And I knew you. You had strength I did not. I closed my eyes. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, demand collapse. But all I saw in her eyes was guilt.
Not weakness. Not abandonment.
Just a woman who had suffered alone.
She took a deep breath.
When I saw her name on the chart.
When I touched her hand. I knew.
But I did not come back to take her from you. I only wanted to make sure she lived. Even if she never knew who I was.
My voice trembled.
She called you Mama. A tear finally rolled down her cheek.
I heard. And it broke me.
Because I had spent 7 years imagining what her voice might sound like. And then I heard it, and it was real. She turned away, hiding her face. But I stepped forward and gently touched her shoulder. She needs you, I said. And maybe. So do I. She turned back. Our eyes locked in silence. Two hearts holding 7 years of unsaid words between them. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. The kind of understanding that only comes after pain. After survival. After love that never truly died. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the note. The one she left behind years ago. I unfolded it slowly, handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands. As she read, her lips trembled. Her shoulders began to shake. And finally, she broke. I was wrong, she sobbed. I was so wrong. And I did what I never thought I would do. I opened my arms. And held her. The woman who shattered me. The woman who saved my daughter. The woman I never stopped loving. In that moment, the hospital disappeared.
The world fell away.
There was only us. Two broken souls. Trying to rebuild something neither of us could name. Suddenly, a nurse appeared in the hallway. "Mr. Leon, sir, your daughter, she is awake. And she is asking for both of you."
Both. Elina looked at me, startled.
I smiled through my tears.
She already knows, I said.
She has always known. We walked together down the corridor.
Step by step.
Not as strangers.
Not as enemies. But as two people.
On the edge of something new. The hallway felt longer now. Every step forward carried the weight of memories. And the fragile hope of something we never dared to dream again.
Elina walked beside me, silent.
But her hand brushed against mine. A touch so light, it almost felt like apology.
Or maybe a question. I did not pull away.
As we approached the pediatric ward, I could hear soft humming from inside the room.
Elina. That sound.
It had always been her way of feeling safe. Of comforting herself when the world around her became too loud.
Elina stopped at the door. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled. "I do not know what to say," she whispered.
Her voice cracked like dry wood. "I do not even know if I deserve to be in there."
I turned to her.
"You gave her life. You gave her a second chance. And you gave me back something I did not even know I had lost."
Her eyes filled again.
But this time, she did not look away. "I am not here to erase what you built," she said softly. "I only want to love her. If she lets me."
I nodded. She will.
Because deep down, she has always been waiting for you. I opened the door.
Slowly.
The room smelled like lavender. Elina was sitting up in bed. A book open in her lap. Her cheeks still pale but her eyes bright again. When she saw me, she lit up.
"Papa." I rushed to her.
Wrapped my arms around her fragile frame. And then she noticed Elina.
For a moment. She just stared. Quiet. Still. Then she reached out.
"You came back," she said. As if it was the most natural thing in the world.
Elina froze in place.
I did not know you remembered me," she stammered.
Elina nodded.
"I see you in my dreams. You always say, 'I love you, little light.'"
Elina gasped.
Her knees buckled. And she dropped beside the bed, clutching the edge of the mattress like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "That is what I called you," she whispered.
"When you were born."
They stared at each other. Neither speaking. But everything being said. Elina reached out again.
Elina took her hand.
They stayed like that. Fingers interlocked. Hearts realigning. And in that sacred moment, I realized something profound. Forgiveness is not always spoken. Sometimes, it is felt. In a child's hand. In a mother's tears. In the silence between two people. Who have finally found their way back.
A nurse peeked in.
She smiled when she saw the scene. Then gently placed a tray of food on the side table.
"I will come back later," she said quietly.
As she left, Elina looked at both of us. "Can Mama stay with us now?" she asked. Neither of us answered immediately. Because we knew. This was no longer about permission. It was about healing. It was about love. And it was about finally becoming whole.
I turned to Elina.
She looked at me, tears streaming.
But her smile.
That smile was the light I had not seen in over 7 years.
"Yes," I said.
"From now on she stays." Elina kissed Elina's forehead. Then looked up at me. And in her eyes, I saw the beginning. Of something we never believed we would ever have again. Family. Just then, Elina coughed lightly. And Elina instinctively reached for the stethoscope. But as she listened, her face suddenly changed. Concern. Then confusion. Then something deeper. She removed the stethoscope. Checked again. "What is it?" I asked quickly. She did not answer. Instead, she leaned in closer to our daughter. Eyes narrowing in focus. And then, she sat back. Gripped the side of the bed. "I need to run some tests," she said quietly. "What kind of tests?" I asked, panic rising again. Elina looked up. This time, her expression unreadable. Her heartbeat. There is something I did not notice before. I stood frozen. My mind spinning. What does that mean? She reached for her tablet. Already typing. Already moving. But her voice stayed calm. "I am not sure yet. But I need to find out. Because if I am right." She stopped mid-sentence.
looked at me again,
And everything in the room
fell into silence.
Elina's hand hovered over the screen, her fingers trembling, her eyes darting from the data to Elina's chest. Then back to me. I took a slow breath, afraid to break the fragile stillness between us.
Elina, I said.
Tell me what you are thinking.
She swallowed hard. Her lips moved.
But the words were trapped behind fear. I think I heard a murmur, she finally whispered. An irregular rhythm. It could be innocent. Many children have benign murmurs. But with the recent fever,
and her fatigue,
I need to be certain it is not something more.
I stepped closer,
Put my hand gently on her shoulder. Whatever it is, we face it together. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears.
and something deeper. A mother's guilt. A doctor's dread.
A woman caught between science and love.
I left her once, she said, voice cracking.
I cannot lose her now.
I shook my head.
No one is losing anyone. Elina stirred in her bed. Her lashes fluttered. Her small voice reached us. Barely a whisper. Mama, why are you crying? Elina wiped her face quickly.
Forced a smile. Leaned in close.
I am not crying, sweet girl. Just thinking about how lucky I am. Elina smiled sleepily. I dreamed of you again. But this time, Papa was there too. And we were all together. Elina could not hold back anymore. She buried her face in the blanket beside Elina's hand. And wept silently.
I stood by them. Powerless.
Yet filled with something I had not felt in years.
Purpose.
This was not a boardroom.
Not a hostile takeover.
Not a billion-dollar deal. This was my family.
And now,
There was no price too high. Minutes later, Elina stood. Pulled herself together with the precision of a surgeon. And the soul of a mother. I need a full echocardiogram. A cardiac enzyme panel. And a pediatric cardiologist on standby. I reached for my phone, already dialing.
done.
Whatever you need. Whoever you need. As the arrangements fell into place, Elina paced the room. Her eyes never leaving Elina. But I noticed something else. A journal she had left in the corner chair. I picked it up. The leather was old. Worn at the edges. And embossed on the front was a single letter, A. I opened it gently. Inside were pages.
Hundreds of them. Drawings. Notes. Letters. All written to a child.
Who never received them.
My little light.
Today, I heard a girl in the market say your name. I imagined you were there. I passed a playground and counted the swings. I wondered which one would have been yours.
My chest tightened.
Each page was a lifetime.
A year lost. A heartbeat missed.
Elina had never stopped being her mother. She had only been living in the shadows.
Loving from afar.
I closed the journal carefully.
Looked at her.
You wrote to her all these years?
She turned.
Saw the journal in my hand. Her face froze. I could not let her go, she whispered. I could not see her. But I never stopped talking to her.
A silence fell. Not empty.
But full of everything that had been left unsaid.
I stepped forward.
Placed the journal on the nightstand. When she is ready, you should read these to her. Elina nodded slowly. Her eyes grateful.
Haunted. Just then, the door opened.
A young nurse entered with a soft knock. The echo room is ready, she said. And the specialist is on her way. Elina turned back to Elina. Ready for a little adventure, my love?
Elina smiled.
Will you hold my hand the whole time?
Elina reached out.
I will never let go again. As they wheeled Elina out, I followed silently. But deep inside, a question began to grow. What if the murmur was not benign? What if fate had brought Elina back? Only to test us again? And what if this time, love alone would not be enough? The elevator ride to the cardiology floor was quiet.
Too quiet.
The kind of silence that feels like it is holding its breath. Elina held Elina's small hand in hers. Fingers intertwined. Their connection finally visible. I stood behind them. One hand gripping the railing. The other clenched tightly in my pocket. I could hear the faint beeping from the machines on the floor below. Smell the antiseptic in the air. Feel the tension in Elina's shoulders as she stared at the elevator numbers. Each ding a countdown we did not ask for. When we arrived, a team was already waiting. The pediatric cardiologist introduced herself with soft authority. She looked at Elina and smiled. "You are very brave. Let us make sure that beautiful heart of yours is as strong as it should be."
Elina looked up at Elina. Then at me.
"I am not scared," she said. "I have both of you now." The words hit me harder than I expected. We followed them into the imaging room. Elina lay down on the narrow table. Her chest exposed, tiny electrodes placed gently on her skin. The monitor lit up in soft blue. Waves began to move. Peaks and valleys. Each one more than just a signal. It was her life unfolding on a screen. Elina stood on one side. I stood on the other. The cardiologist's eyes narrowed. She adjusted the probe. Zoomed in. Listened. Her brow furrowed. She leaned forward. Tapped the screen. Her assistant took notes. Then she turned toward us. Not smiling. Not alarmed. Just serious. "There is a structural abnormality," she began. "A defect in the septum, between the chambers of the heart." Elina's hand gripped the rail. Her knuckles turned white. "Is it dangerous?" I asked. The cardiologist nodded slowly. "It can be. Left untreated, it could lead to complications. But the good news is, we caught it early. And it is operable." Operable. A word that brought both hope and horror. Surgery. For a child. My child. Elina's voice was calm, but low. "What is the risk?" The cardiologist paused. "Low but not zero. This is delicate. We will need a surgical team that specializes in pediatric cardiac repair." I exhaled. Nodded. "Whatever it takes. You will have everything you need." Elina turned her head toward us. Her eyes wide. But not afraid. "Will it hurt?" she asked. Elina crouched down beside her. Brushed her hair back gently. "There might be some pain. But you are the bravest girl I know." Elina nodded once. Then looked at me. "Promise you will both be there when I wake up?" I kneeled beside her. Took her other hand. "I promise." She smiled. The kind of smile that made the walls of my soul crack open. The kind of smile that reminded me why I fought through years of cold, loveless ambition. Just to feel something real. The surgical team began preparations. We were escorted out of the room. Elina sat on a bench in the waiting area. Her face buried in her hands. I sat beside her. Neither of us spoke. Not for a long time. Then finally, she broke the silence. She was born with it. I should have been there. Maybe if I had not left. Maybe this would have been caught sooner. I shook my head. You left because you believed you were protecting her. And you came back in time to save her again. She looked at me. Tears falling freely now. I do not know if I deserve this second chance. I reached into my coat pocket. Pulled out the same note she wrote 7 years ago. "You already took your second chance," I said. "And you are using it beautifully." Just then, a nurse approached. "Mr. Leon. We need you to sign the surgical consent form." I stood. Took the clipboard. Signed without hesitation. Then paused. Looked at Elina. Her mother should sign too. The nurse hesitated. Elina looked stunned. "But I am not." "You are," I said. "You always were." She stood slowly. Took the pen. Signed beside my name. 2 names. 2 hearts. 2 broken roads converging in a single choice. The nurse nodded and walked away. And we waited. Sat side by side. Listening to the distant sounds of surgical tools. And muffled footsteps. Minutes passed like hours. Hours passed like lifetimes. Until finally, the door opened. And the surgeon stepped in. Still masked. Still silent. Elina stood instantly. I followed. She pulled off her gloves. Pulled down her mask. Her expression held no hint of alarm. But it held something else. Something solemn. As though she had seen a truth inside our daughter's heart. That words could not fully contain. Elina's hand tightened around mine. Neither of us breathed. The surgeon stepped closer. Calm. Measured. And then finally she spoke. "The surgery is complete." Elina gasped. I felt the blood rush back to my limbs. She is stable. Breathing on her own. Her vitals are strong. My knees almost gave way. Relief came like a flood. Hot, overwhelming, impossible to hold back. She will need monitoring in ICU for the next 48 hours, the surgeon continued. But the procedure was a success.
The defect is closed. Her heart is strong.
Elina covered her mouth with her hands. Tears streamed silently. She nodded over and over, as if convincing herself it was real.
Thank you, I said. Voice hoarse, broken.
Thank you for saving her. The surgeon gave a gentle smile.
She is a fighter.
She never stopped fighting.
She paused, then added.
And she kept whispering something in her sleep. Over and over.
I frowned.
What did she say? The surgeon's eyes softened. She kept saying, "Tell Mama I heard her. I heard her every time."
Elina crumbled into the seat, shoulders shaking, and I knelt beside her. She sobbed, not from fear this time, but from a release.
7 years in the making. That small girl, lying in that sterile room, had carried a mother's voice, locked deep inside her soul, even in absence, even in pain, even in silence. That was the bond. Not broken, only waiting. Later, when we were finally allowed to see her, we entered the recovery room together. Machines beeped in soft rhythm. The window let in a sliver of morning light.
And there she was, tiny, wrapped in white, sleeping peacefully. I reached for her hand. So did Elina.
Elina's fingers curled around ours, without opening her eyes.
She knew. She felt us. She chose both. We stood there silent. As the dawn painted the walls in soft gold, Elina leaned her head on my shoulder. We had not spoken about tomorrow. We had not dared dream that far yet. But in that moment, with our daughter breathing safely between us, the past no longer held power. All that mattered was the now, the chance to build again, to love forward. Still, questions hung in the air. Would Elina stay? Could we ever truly repair what we lost? Would Elina one day understand it all? The pain, the sacrifice, the silent love? I did not know. But I knew this. Whatever came next, we would walk into it together. Step by step. Heart to heart. Then suddenly, Elina stirred. Her lashes lifted slightly. She looked at us. And in the faintest whisper, she said, "I dreamed you were both here. And now, you are." We leaned in, kissed her forehead. Elina whispered back, "We are not going anywhere." But even as she said it, I could feel something still lingering inside her. A shadow. A secret. Something unspoken. She looked at me then, as if about to say it, to release one final truth. But just as her lips parted, the nurse returned. "Visiting hours are up for now. Let her rest." Elina nodded. But as we stepped out of the room, her hand slid from mine. Her steps grew slower. I turned to her, and saw it. That distant look in her eyes. The storm behind the calm. "Elina," I asked softly, "what is it?" She hesitated. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. "But I do not know if it will change everything." I stopped. Faced her fully. "Ready. For Elina's sake," I said. "Tell me." Elina looked down. Her voice barely audible. "When I left 7 years ago, I was not alone." I stared at her. The world tilted. "Elina, what do you mean?" She looked up. Eyes full of fear, love, and something I could not name. I gave up Elina. But I did not give up only one child. I stood frozen. The corridor spun. Not from dizziness, but from the weight of what she had just said. "Elina." My voice cracked. What are you saying?" She turned away, unable to hold my gaze. Her hand gripped the edge of a window frame. Knuckles white. "I had twins," she whispered. Her breath caught. "I gave birth to 2 children, Leon. Not one." My heart stopped. The silence between us became deafening. Twins. 2 heartbeats. 2 lives. "I did not know," I said, breathless. "No one told me." "No one knew," she replied. "I delivered in a remote clinic. Away from hospitals, away from the world. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late to go back." She wiped her face with trembling fingers. I was not well. Physically. Mentally. I was unraveling. The thought of raising 1 child felt impossible. But 2. She swallowed. "I gave Elina to you. Because I knew you would protect her. I believed she needed strength I did not have. But the other. The other was sick. Very sick. He had trouble breathing the moment he was born. A son. My legs grew weak beneath me. Elina. Where is he? Her lips quivered. Her voice was a whisper of guilt. I placed him in the care of a woman I trusted. A midwife who had helped me. I left money, instructions. I planned to return. To get better. To be a mother again. But you never did, I said, my voice hollow. She nodded. I could not find them again. They vanished. And I searched Leon. 4 years. Every clinic. Every connection. But it was like they disappeared into smoke. I staggered backward. My mind spinning with images. A boy alone. My son. Somewhere out there. Elina had been just half the story. Half the pain. Half the love. I thought I could bury it, she said. Tears streaming now. I thought if I could be a part of her life again. That maybe I could forgive myself. But every night I close my eyes. And I see him. His face. His tiny hands struggling to hold on. I looked out the window. The city lights blinked like distant stars. Each one could be a clue. A trail. A memory waiting to be found. Elina, I said quietly. If he is out there, then we will find him. She turned to me. Her eyes wide. You would help me? I stepped closer. Took her hands in mine. We lost 7 years. We will not lose another second. Her shoulders shook. She collapsed into my arms. A flood of grief and hope and something else. A mother's deepest longing. Finally breaking free. I held her close. And silently made a promise. We would search. We would not stop. Until our family was whole. But deep inside, a quiet fear took root. If our son was still alive, where had he been all these years? And who had he become without us? Weeks turned into months. Elina and I, 2 people once severed by silence, were now bound by a shared purpose. We became partners in more than just parenting. We became seekers of truth. Relentless in our pursuit to find the child we had lost. Elina recovered beautifully. Her strength returned with each passing day. And so did her joy. She called Elina Mama, without hesitation now. Their bond was inseparable. A healing that defied science and time. But there was still a piece missing. A heartbeat we had never held. A son who had entered the world. Unseen, unheard, unclaimed. The search was not easy. The midwife who had taken him had changed her name. Moved across provinces. The paper trail faded like fog. But then, a break. A record surfaced from a small orphanage. Years old. Of a boy who had been left at its doorstep. With only a cloth marked AM. Alexander Mikhailov. No known parents. No medical history. But he bore a birthmark. Identical to the one on Elina's shoulder. When we found him, he was 11. Quiet. Cautious. Bright but guarded. He had been in and out of foster care. Unclaimed. Unwanted. And yet, he survived. When Elina saw him, she dropped to her knees. Her hands trembling as she reached for his. Alexander, she whispered. I am your mother. He studied her face. Then mine. Then Elina's. He did not speak for a long time. But slowly, he stepped forward. And hugged her. Wordlessly. Completely. I placed a hand on his shoulder. He did not flinch. He looked up at me. And for the first time, I saw my eyes in his. That evening, we brought him home. Not to a mansion. Not to wealth. But to warmth. To belonging. We ate together at the same table. Laughed. Cried. Shared stories that had never been told. And something extraordinary happened. We became a family. Not because we had the same blood. But because we chose to forgive. To rise above the past. To build forward, not look back. The moral of our story? Sometimes, life breaks us to rebuild us. It separates us to reunite us stronger. Mistakes do not define your future. What you do after them does. And love, true love, is never lost. It waits. It weathers. And when the time is right, it returns like a sunrise after a long bitter night. We are not perfect. But we are whole. And for that, I am endlessly grateful. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story on Brave Souls Speak. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.